There is a creature that may have solved the one problem every living thing on Earth is born to lose. And we drop it into a pot of boiling water.
Think about that for a second. Somewhere right now, in a tank near the front of a restaurant, behind smudged glass under a fluorescent light, sits an animal that does not grow old the way you and I grow old. It does not weaken with the years. It does not slow down. Its body does not quietly give up on it. And almost nobody walking past that tank has any idea what they're looking at.
It's a lobster. We've decided lobsters are food. We've decided they're simple. We crack them open with little metal tools, and we never once wonder what was happening inside that shell before it reached our plate. But the truth is stranger than anything we tell ourselves about them. Because while our cells are counting down, slowly running out of time from the moment we're born, the lobster seems to have stopped the clock entirely.
Let me show you what I mean. When you get older, your body starts to wear at the edges. It's invisible at first. Deep inside your cells, tiny protective caps sit on the ends of your DNA, and every time a cell divides, those caps get a little shorter. They're like the plastic tips on a shoelace. When they fray away completely, the cell can no longer copy itself properly. This is aging. Not the gray hair, not the wrinkles. This. The quiet shortening happening in every one of us, every single day.
The lobster doesn't seem to lose that protection. It produces an enzyme that keeps rebuilding those caps over and over, refusing to let them wear down. So its cells keep dividing, cleanly, faithfully, the way yours did when you were a child, and your body still believed it had forever. A lobster that is 50 years old is not a tired, fading version of a young one. In many ways, it is simply a larger one, stronger, more fertile, more capable than it was in its youth. Read that again, because it goes against everything we understand about being alive. For us, time takes things away. Strength, speed, the ease we once had in our own bodies. For the lobster, time mostly just adds. The old ones are not the weak ones in the population. They are often the most powerful, the most dangerous, the ones other lobsters move away from. So why have we never seen a lobster the size of a car? This is the part that quietly breaks people. The lobster's body refuses to age, but its shell does not. A lobster wears its skeleton on the outside, hard and rigid, and to grow, it has to climb out of that shell completely. Imagine pulling your entire body, every muscle, every organ, even the lining of your stomach, out through a crack in your own armor. That is what a lobster does, again and again, its whole life. And every time it does it, the danger grows. A bigger lobster needs more energy to break free of an old shell. The escape takes longer, it gets harder, and eventually, for many of them, one molt becomes too much. The animal that cannot be defeated by time gets trapped halfway out of itself, exhausted, and dies in the very act of trying to grow. Others run out of strength to molt at all, and their old shell slowly turns against them, growing weak, letting infection in. I want you to sit with how strange that is. This is an animal that beat the thing we fear most. It solved aging. And it still dies anyway. Not because its time ran out, but because growing bigger forever turned out to be a trap of its own. There's something almost human in that, isn't there? The dream of never aging and the quiet catch hidden inside it. Now I have to be honest with you, because I think you'd catch me if I wasn't. People love to call the lobster immortal. It isn't. You can absolutely kill a lobster. Predators do it constantly. Disease does it. We do it millions of times a day. The lobster has not escaped death. What it has escaped is the slow surrender, the fading, the part where the body simply gives up on its own. And honestly, that might be the part most of us would trade for. Because here is the thought I can't let go of. The lobster doesn't know any of this. It isn't grateful. It doesn't lie on the seabed at night feeling lucky that it doesn't age. It just lives and grows and molts and grows again, completely unaware that it carries inside its body an answer that human scientists are still chasing. Right now, in laboratories, people are studying that same enzyme, the one keeping the lobster young, hoping it might one day slow our own clocks down. We are looking to the lobster for the secret to staying young, and we are boiling it alive to find out. So the next time you walk past that tank, those slow bodies stacked on top of each other under the cheap light, look a little longer. You're not looking at dinner. You're looking at one of the oldest experiments nature ever ran. A creature that quietly refused the deal the rest of us were forced to accept. It got more time than it ever knew what to do with. It just never learned that the growing was the thing that would end it. Some of the oldest living things in the ocean are sitting in plain sight, and we step around them like they're rocks. You've seen one, maybe on a beach, maybe in a tide pool, maybe pulled up on a net and tossed back without a second thought. A dark little ball of spines, slow, silent, doing apparently nothing at all. The sea urchin is the kind of animal your eyes slide right past, because it doesn't chase, it doesn't hunt, it doesn't perform. It just sits there on the seabed, bristling, waiting. And it has been waiting longer than you could possibly guess. Because some of these urchins, the red ones along certain cold coastlines, are not years old. They are not decades old. They have been sitting on that same stretch of rock for more than 100 years. Some of them, scientists believe, are closer to 200. There are urchins alive on the ocean floor right now that were already there before your grandparents were born, before cars, before the lights came on in most of the world. And in all that time, they barely changed at all. This is what makes the urchin so quietly unsettling once you understand it. With most living things, you can see age. You can read it on the body, in the slowing, in the wear. A very old animal usually looks like a very old animal. But the urchin doesn't play by that rule. A 200-year-old urchin can be almost impossible to tell apart from a young one. Same spines, same movement, same ability to feed, to heal, to reproduce. Time passes around it. Generations of fish are born and die in the water above it, and the urchin just stays, unmarked, unbothered. Let me put that into something you can feel. Imagine a person who, at 150 years old, could still do everything they could do at 20. same strength in their hands, same clear eyes, still able to have children. Not clinging to life in a frail body, but genuinely, fully capable, as if the decades simply forgot to land on them. We would call that a miracle. We would build religions around a person like that. The urchin does it without trying, and we use it as a paperweight in tide pool photos. Here's the part that scientists find almost maddening. When they study these old urchins, they go looking for the damage, the breakdown, the buildup of all the little failures that pile up inside a body over a long life. In us, those failures are everywhere by old age. They're the reason we slow down. But in the oldest urchins, that wreckage is strangely, stubbornly missing. Their tissues stay capable of repairing themselves. Their ability to reproduce doesn't fade with the years the way ours does. The body just keeps maintaining itself, decade after decade, as if it never got the message that it's supposed to wind down. It is, in the most literal sense, an animal that does not seem to know how to get old. And it's hiding under a disguise so perfect, we never thought to question it. Because here is the trick the urchin played on all of us. It looks boring. It looks like nothing. A spiny lump that doesn't move fast enough to be impressive and doesn't do anything dramatic enough to make the highlight reel. We are drawn to the sharks, the giants, the hunters. We never stop for the quiet thing in the corner. And so, one of the most remarkable feats of survival on the entire planet, an animal that may outlive 5 or 6 human lifetimes, gets completely overlooked because it had the bad luck of being shaped like a burr instead of a beast. I find that strangely moving. The grandest things aren't always loud. Sometimes the most extraordinary life in the room is the one everybody's ignoring. Now I want to be straight with you, the same way I always will be. The urchin is not invincible, and it is not truly ageless. It can be eaten. Sea otters crack them open by the dozen. People harvest them. Disease can sweep through and wipe out whole populations of them in a season. The urchin has not defeated death. What it has defeated is time itself, the slow erosion that takes the rest of us apart from the inside. Death can still reach the urchin from the outside, through a predator or a sickness. It just can't seem to reach it from within. And that distinction is the whole reason this animal matters. Because somewhere on the seabed tonight, there is an urchin that watched a century go by. It was there through wars it will never know happened. It was there while entire cities rose out of nothing on the land it cannot see. It felt the water warm and cool and warm again through more seasons than any person gets to live. And it noticed none of it. It simply held its place, spines out, quietly refusing to age, while everything soft and fast and warm-blooded around it was born, struggled, and disappeared. The next time you're near the water and you see one of those dark, spiny shapes wedged into the rocks, I want you to do something most people never have. Stop, just for a moment. Don't step over it. Look at it. Because you might be looking at something older than your whole family line. A creature that was already ancient when the world you know was new. And it has nothing to say about it. It never did. It just waits. We gave it the name of a flower because we could not believe it was an animal at all. The anemone. Soft, swaying, petaled, opening and closing with the water like something rooted in a garden. For most of human history, we genuinely thought these were plants. They don't have a face. They don't have eyes you can find. They don't chase anything or flee from anything. They just open in the current, a ring of slow tentacles drifting like petals in a breeze. And you could watch one for an hour and swear you were looking at underwater flora. But it isn't a plant. It's an animal. A hunter, even. And it may be one of the longest living creatures in the entire sea. That's the first quiet shock of the anemone. We misfiled it. We looked at this thing, and our brains reached for the wrong box entirely. And in doing so, we missed what it actually was. A predator wearing the costume of a flower. A creature that solved one of life's hardest problems while pretending the whole time to be something soft and harmless and ordinary. Here is the problem it solved. Almost everything alive has a built-in expiration. Not just an age it tends to reach, but a deep, programmed sense that the body should eventually stop. Cells are told, somewhere in their instructions, that they have a limited number of times they're allowed to renew before they must give up. It's a kind of internal countdown written into the blueprint, and it's the reason that even with perfect care, even with no accidents and no disease, the rest of us still slowly run down. The anemone seems to have been built without that ending. In aquariums, in the careful records of people who kept them, individual anemones have lived for 60, 70, 80 years and longer. And in all that time, the keepers watched for the decline that should have come. The fading, the slowing, the signs that the animal was nearing the end of its run. And it didn't come. The anemone at 80 looked and behaved like the anemone at 8. It still ate, it still split and healed and renewed itself. The countdown that ticks inside almost every living thing simply does not appear to be ticking inside this one. And the most haunting part is how it spends all that time. It does almost nothing. Think about how strange that is. We tend to believe that a long life has to be earned through motion, through fighting, fleeing, striving, winning. The fast survive and the slow get left behind. That's the story we're told about nature. But the anemone broke that story completely. It found a different path entirely. It planted itself on a rock, opened its arms to the water, and decided that it would not race anything. It would simply outlast. While the fish around it burned bright and fast and short, darting and breeding and dying inside a handful of years, the anemone stayed exactly where it was, patient past the point of comprehension. It let the food come to it. It let the decades come to it. It met everything the ocean threw at it with the same slow, swaying calm. And it was still there, still open, still feeding, long after almost everything that ever swam past it was gone. There's a strange lesson buried in that, if you want one. We spend so much of our lives convinced that to survive, we have to keep moving, keep fighting, keep chasing. And here is a creature that conquered time by doing the opposite, by staying still, by being patient in a way no human heart could ever manage. But I won't oversell it to you.
because you'd know. The anemone is not immortal, and it is not safe. It can be torn from its rock by a storm. It can be eaten by the few specialized creatures bold enough to brave its sting. Pollution can poison it. A warming sea can bleach and starve it, the same way it does to the coral around it. The anemone has not escaped death. Death can still arrive from the outside, suddenly, from 100 directions. What the anemone escaped is the slow death from within, the one that comes for the rest of us, whether anything attacks us or not. It will not wither with age. It simply waits to be taken. And mostly, for a very long time, nothing takes it. So picture it now. A single anemone anchored to one stone on the reef, in the exact spot it has held for longer than you've been alive. The water moves through its tentacles the way it did this morning, the way it did 1,000 mornings ago, the way it will keep doing long after this video ends and you've closed your phone and gone on with your day. It is not waiting for anything. It is not hoping for more time. It already has more time than it knows what to do with, and it spends every second of it doing the one thing it has always done. It opens. It feeds. It holds its place. We named it after a flower, because a flower is the most fragile, fleeting thing we could think of. Something that blooms for a moment and is gone. We could not have chosen a more wrong name if we tried. Because of all the things drifting and swimming and struggling out there in the dark, this soft, swaying, petaled little creature may be the one the years cannot reach. The flower that never wilts, quietly outliving us all, while pretending it was never even alive. There is an animal in the ocean that you cannot destroy by tearing it apart. In fact, if you try, you might just make more of them. Up to now, every creature I've shown you survives by refusing to age. They beat time by staying the same, year after year, decade after decade. The starfish does something else entirely. The starfish doesn't escape death by avoiding damage. It escapes death by undoing it. You already know what a starfish looks like. It's one of the first sea creatures we ever learned to draw as children. A simple, five-pointed shape. The symbol we scrawl in the sky and press into the sand. We think of it as gentle, decorative, the kind of thing you'd find dried out and stuck to a souvenir. We have completely tamed it in our imaginations. So let me untame it for you. Take a starfish and cut off one of its arms. With almost any other animal, that's a wound, a loss, something the body has to survive in spite of. But the starfish doesn't treat it as a loss at all. It simply begins to grow the arm back, slowly, patiently, rebuilding the limb piece by piece as if nothing important had happened. Now do something stranger. Take that severed arm, the piece you cut away and threw aside, and watch it. In some species, if a piece of the central body went with it, that lonely arm does the unthinkable. It grows a whole new starfish. Sit with that. The part you removed to harm the animal becomes a second animal. The damage doesn't subtract, it multiplies. People once tried to kill starfish that were eating their oyster beds, and they did it the obvious way, by chopping them up and tossing the pieces back into the sea. And the starfish population didn't fall. It exploded. Every piece they cut
became a new hunter. They were trying to end these animals, and instead they were breeding them by hand, one careless cut at a time.
That is an entirely different kind of survival than anything we've talked about, and it forces a question that's genuinely hard to answer.
If you cut a starfish in two, and both halves live and become whole again, which one was the original?
There isn't a good answer.
And that's the point. We carry this deep assumption that a life is a single thread, one beginning and one end, one self that either continues or stops. The starfish doesn't obey that. Its sense of being one creature is so loose, so distributed across its whole body, that you can break that single life into pieces, and each piece simply carries on being alive. There is no central place where the starfish keeps its existence. No one spot you could destroy to truly end it. It is everywhere in itself at once.
How does it do this?
The secret is in what a starfish keeps in reserve. Throughout its body, it holds on to cells that never fully committed to being one thing. They stayed open, undecided, and when the animal is torn, those cells can become whatever the missing part needs to be. Nerve, gut, skin, muscle, all rebuilt from scratch. It's as if the starfish never stopped being partly unfinished, never locked its body down the way ours does. We grow up, and our cells settle into their final jobs and mostly lose the ability to change roles. The starfish kept its options open its entire life, and that openness is exactly what lets it come back from being cut to pieces. There is something quietly profound in that, if you let it land. The reason the starfish can rebuild itself is that it never fully hardened into one fixed thing. It stayed flexible enough to become whatever it needed to be. The rest of us spend our lives becoming more set, more finished, more certain of our own shape, and we lose a little of that ability to recover with every step. The starfish made the opposite trade.
But I'll be honest with you, the way I have been all along.
This is not true immortality, and I won't pretend it is. A starfish can absolutely be killed. The regeneration takes time, and a slow, half-rebuilt starfish is a vulnerable one. A predator can swallow it whole before it ever has the chance to grow back. Disease can take it, and in recent years, a wasting sickness has dissolved millions of them along whole coastlines, melting them away faster than any of them could repair. The starfish has not beaten death. What it has beaten is the kind of death we think of as final, the wound that should be the end. For the starfish, being broken is not the end of the story. Very often, it's just the middle.
So the next time you find one, dried and stiff in a gift shop or pressed flat in a photo, I want you to remember what it really is underneath that simple, familiar shape. Not a decoration, not a symbol. A creature that treats destruction as an inconvenience. One that looks at the single worst thing that can happen to a body, being torn apart, and answers it by becoming more, not less. We learned to draw it as the easiest, friendliest shape in the sea. 5 soft points, a child's first ocean doodle. And all that time, hidden inside that gentle shape, was one of the most defiant survivors the water has ever produced.
an animal that cannot be reasoned out of existence the normal way, that you cannot simply cut down. You can break it. You just can't seem to make it stop. There is a creature that when something tries to kill it, defends itself by tearing out its own organs and throwing them at the threat. I want you to really picture that before we go on, because it sounds made up. Imagine being attacked, and your survival plan is to rip out your own stomach, your own guts, the machinery that keeps you alive, and fling it away from your body on purpose. It sounds like the opposite of survival. It sounds like giving up in the most violent way possible. For the sea cucumber, it's just Tuesday. Now, the sea cucumber might be the least glamorous animal I've shown you yet. And I know that's saying something after a spiny ball and a flower that turned out to be a predator. It looks like exactly what the name promises, a soft, lumpy tube lying on the seabed. No arms, no face, no obvious front or back, no weapons you can see. It spends its days slowly working its way along the bottom, quietly cleaning the sand. And if you swam past one, you would almost certainly decide it was the most boring thing on the entire reef. That judgment would be a serious mistake. Because when a predator finally does corner this defenseless-looking tube, the sea cucumber unleashes one of the strangest survival acts in the entire animal kingdom. It violently contracts its body and expels its internal organs straight out through its own back end. Its guts come pouring out into the water, sometimes sticky, sometimes mildly toxic, a confusing tangle of tissue thrown directly at whatever is trying to eat it. And here is the cold genius of it. The predator stops. It's now faced with a meal of fresh, exposed organs hanging right in front of it, and it takes the easy offering. While it's distracted, busy with the parts the cucumber threw away, the rest of the animal, the part that actually matters, quietly drags itself off to safety. It sacrificed its insides to save itself. It paid with its own organs to buy a few seconds of escape, and it took the deal without hesitation. I know what you're thinking. Surely that's a death sentence anyway. Surely an animal that has just emptied itself of its own internal organs is finished, escape or no escape. How long can anything survive, gutted and hollow? This is where the sea cucumber stops being strange and starts being almost unbelievable. It grows them back. All of them. Over the following days and weeks, in the safety it bought with that sacrifice, the sea cucumber regenerates the entire set of organs it threw away. A new gut, new internal systems, the whole inner machinery rebuilt from almost nothing, as if it had simply misplaced its insides and gone to fetch a replacement set. The act that should have ended its life turns out to be completely reversible. It can do this again and again. It can give up its own body and reclaim it over and over, treating its internal organs less like something precious and permanent, and more like a tool it can drop when threatened and pick back up when safe. Think about what that really means. For us, our organs are us. The idea of losing even one is catastrophic, life-altering, the kind of thing that defines the rest of a person's days. The sea cucumber treats the same loss as temporary, a setback, an inconvenience to be patiently undone. It has loosened its grip on its own body so completely that it can let pieces of itself go without losing itself at all.
And that points at something deeper about how this animal beats time.
The starfish I showed you could rebuild a lost arm. The sea cucumber rebuilds its entire core, the soft, vital center that the rest of us guard above everything else. It keeps that same openness in its cells that lets it reconstruct whatever it has lost, which means damage that would be permanent for almost anything else is, for this animal, just a phase it passes through on the way back to whole. It doesn't accumulate its wounds the way we do. It clears them. It resets. There's a strange kind of wisdom hiding in that ugly little tube, if you're willing to look for it. We hold on so tightly to everything, our bodies, our things, our sense of who we are, terrified of losing any part of it. And here is a creature that survives precisely because it knows how to let go. It releases what it has to release, lives through the emptiness, and rebuilds. Holding on too hard would have killed it long ago. I'll be honest with you, as always. The sea cucumber is not immortal, and it is not untouchable. The trick has limits. Throwing out its organs costs it dearly, and if it has to do it too often, or if it can't find the safety and food it needs to recover, it can absolutely die. Predators that aren't fooled will simply eat the whole thing. People harvest sea cucumbers by the millions. It has not escaped death. What it has escaped is the finality of injury, the idea that being torn open has to be the end. For this animal, being gutted is survivable, even routine.
So the next time you hear the sea cucumber dismissed as the dull janitor of the sea floor, the lumpy nobody quietly eating sand, remember what's really lying there in the dark. A creature with a survival strategy so extreme it sounds insane, and a body so forgiving it can undo the worst thing that ever happens to it. It looks like the easiest meal on the reef. It just happens to be one of the hardest to actually finish. Because you can take its insides, and it will simply grow new ones and carry on, as if you'd never tried at all. There is an animal that, when life goes wrong, will cut off its own head and walk away from the rest of its body. And the head is the part that lives. I've shown you creatures that regrow a missing arm, creatures that regrow their own organs after throwing them away. You might think you've now seen the limit of what a living thing can rebuild. You haven't. Because everything until this point has been about a body repairing damage. What I'm about to show you is a body making a decision. A creature looking at most of itself and choosing deliberately to leave it behind. The animal is a sea slug. And I know how that sounds. A slug. The word alone makes people switch off. We picture something slow and slimy and pointless, the kind of thing you'd scrape off a garden path. But the sea slugs are some of the most quietly astonishing animals in the entire ocean. And a few of them do something so far outside our understanding of life that when scientists first watched it happen, they could hardly believe their own eyes. Here is what they saw. A sea slug, going about its life, suddenly begins to separate at the neck. Not from an injury, not from an attack. The animal does it to itself, on purpose, along a precise line, as if it had been built with a tear-away seam it could use whenever it chose. And then the head simply detaches,
It pulls away from the entire body, the heart, the gut, almost everything we'd consider essential to being alive, and it leaves all of it behind on the seabed. The head crawls off, alone, just ahead, dragging itself across the ocean floor. And it does not die. It does not panic. Within hours, it begins to feed, using the simplest parts of itself that survived the split. And then, over the following days and weeks, the impossible thing happens. The head grows a new body, a new heart, new organs, an entire second self, rebuilt from the neck down until the animal is whole again, complete, as if it had simply shed everything below its own shoulders and grown a fresh one to replace it. Stop and let the strangeness of that settle, because it overturns something we never even think to question. We assume the body is the main event, and the head is just the part riding on top. For this creature, it's the reverse. The head is the animal. Everything else is, in a sense, replaceable equipment. It can drop the entire body the way the sea cucumber drops its guts. Except this is on a scale that should be fatal, and it just isn't. Why would anything do this? Why throw away most of yourself when you don't have to? The leading idea is almost more unsettling than the act itself. These sea slugs can become infested with parasites, tiny invaders that get into the body and slowly destroy it from the inside. And the slug's solution to a body that has become a death trap is not to fight the infection. It's to abandon the entire infected body and grow a clean new one. It doesn't cure the disease. It walks away from the diseased part of itself completely and starts again from the head. Think about the level of detachment that requires. To look at most of your own body riddled and failing and treat it as something separable, something you can set down and replace. We cannot imagine that, because to us, the body is non-negotiable. It's the one thing we cannot trade in. The sea slug treats its body as the negotiable part, and its head, its small surviving self, as the thing actually worth saving. And here's the detail that turns this from strange into beautiful. Many of these sea slugs eat algae, and they keep something from that algae inside their own bodies. They hold on to tiny green structures that let them make energy directly from sunlight, the way a plant does. They are animals that have learned to run partly on light. So when that severed head sets off across the seabed, hungry and bodiless, it isn't entirely helpless. It can lie in the sun and feed on light itself, while it slowly rebuilds everything it left behind. It survives the most extreme thing an animal can do to itself, in part by quietly photosynthesizing like a leaf. There is something almost spiritual in that image, if you let yourself sit with it. A creature so committed to continuing that it will release its entire body to do it, lying in a patch of sunlight, running on nothing but light, patiently building itself back from almost nothing. The ultimate fresh start. The clean slate that the rest of us only ever get to dream about. But I'll keep my promise to you and stay honest. This is not immortality, and it does not always work. Not every head survives the separation. The younger, stronger individuals tend to pull it off, while older ones often cannot, and their abandoned bodies, eerily, can keep moving on their own for weeks before they finally fail. The trick has a cost and a limit. The sea slug has not escaped death. What it has escaped is the idea that a ruined body has to mean the end of you. For this animal, the body is just a vessel, and a vessel can be replaced.
So the next time the word slug makes you wrinkle your nose and look away, remember that one of them solved a problem the rest of creation never even dared to attempt. It found a way to leave its own dying body behind, keep the part that truly matters, and begin again from almost nothing. It cuts away everything that's failing. It keeps only the part that's still alive. And it grows the rest right back, in the sunlight, as if the whole catastrophe were nothing more than a chance to start clean. Somewhere out there, gliding over a reef right now, is an animal that was swimming through this same ocean before you were born, before your parents met, before, quite possibly, anyone you have ever loved was alive. After everything I've shown you, the heads that crawl away and the bodies thrown to predators, I want to slow down. Because this next creature doesn't survive through anything violent or strange. It has no trick. It doesn't tear itself apart or grow itself back. It simply keeps going, year after year, decade after decade, with a quiet patience that is almost unbearable to think about once you understand what it has actually lived through. It's the green sea turtle. And of all the animals in this story, it's the one most likely to look back at you. We've all seen them. They've become one of the gentle faces of the ocean, drifting calmly through documentaries, soft-eyed and unhurried. The animal we point at and call peaceful. But we rarely stop to do the math on a single turtle's life. And the math is staggering. A green sea turtle can live 70, 80, 90 years and more. And it ages so slowly, so gracefully, that an old turtle gives away almost nothing of its years. It doesn't sag or stumble. It doesn't slow to a crawl. It moves through its 9th decade with the same calm, powerful glide it had in its 3rd. But the number isn't the part that gets me. It's what those years actually contain. Picture a single turtle. The day it hatched, it was no bigger than the palm of your hand, scrambling across a beach in the dark. One tiny target among hundreds, most of which never made it to the water at all. The odds against that one turtle surviving its first day were enormous. And yet it did. It reached the waves. It vanished into the open sea, into years we know almost nothing about. The lost years, when young turtles disappear into the vast ocean and simply survive. Alone, unwatched, learning the currents of an entire planet. And then it came back, because this is the part of the turtle that breaks my heart a little. After all those years away, a green sea turtle returns to breed at the very same beach where it was born. Across thousands of miles of featureless open ocean, with no map and no landmarks we can see, it finds its way home to the exact stretch of sand it crawled off as a hatchling decades earlier. It carries that one place inside it for its entire long life, through everything. And when the time comes, it goes back. Think about how much that one animal has quietly witnessed. A turtle alive today, an old one, was swimming these waters through events that fill our history books. It felt the ocean change around it across half a century or more. It watched the reefs it grew up over
shift and fade. Whole human generations were born, grew up, grew old, and passed away on the land it would only ever see as a distant line on the horizon. And through all of it, the turtle just kept gliding. Unhurried, unbothered, keeping its own slow time on a scale that makes our busy, frantic lives look like they're happening in fast forward.
That's what makes the turtle different from everything else in this video. The others outlast time by being strange. The turtle outlasts it by being steady. There's no gimmick to point at, no shocking defense, no party trick of regrowth. Just an animal that learned, somehow, to take the years gently, to not be worn down by them, to keep moving at the same calm pace, whether it has lived for 10 years or 90.
And there's something in that the rest of us recognize, isn't there? Because the turtle is the one creature in this story that lives on roughly the same scale we do. We can't truly imagine a clam that lived 500 years, or a head that crawls away from its body. But a life of 80, 90 years, with a long journey out into the world and a quiet return home at the end of it, that we understand. That feels like our own story, told slower, told calmer, told by something that never seems to be in any rush to reach the end. But I'll be honest with you here too, because the turtle deserves honesty most of all. It is not immortal, and right now it is not even safe. For all its slow grace, the green sea turtle is fragile in the ways that matter most. Its eggs are dug up. Its nesting beaches are vanishing under our buildings and our lights. It chokes on the plastic it mistakes for the jellyfish it eats. It drowns in nets meant for other things. The turtle that survived against impossible odds as a hatchling, that crossed oceans and lived through a century of change, can be ended in an afternoon by something it never evolved to understand. It has not escaped death. It barely ages from the inside, but the world we've built keeps finding new ways to reach it from the outside.
And that's exactly why this one matters more than a fact or a number.
The lobster, the urchin, the slug, they'll go on doing what they do, whether we notice or not. But the turtle's long, patient, ancient life now depends more than it ever should on us. On whether we leave its beaches dark and quiet, on what we let drift into its water. The oldest, gentlest traveler in the sea, the one that could outlast a human lifetime several times over, has had its future quietly placed in our hands. So the next time one drifts across your screen, soft-eyed and unhurried, don't just see something peaceful. See something that was already here, something that has been keeping its slow, steady time since before you arrived, and could keep it long after you're gone. If we only let it. We've spent this whole journey looking down, at spiny balls wedged in rocks, at slugs on the seabed, at soft tubes lying in the sand. For the last animal, I need you to look up. Because the final creature in this story is so enormous that the first time you see one in the water, your brain refuses to accept the size of it. It's the whale shark, the biggest fish that has ever lived in the ocean today. And it may also be one of the longest lived. Let me give you the scale first,
because the scale is the whole point. A whale shark can grow longer than a school bus, wider than your living room. It moves through the open ocean like a slow drifting island, its back scattered with a pattern of pale spots as unique as a fingerprint. No two animals ever quite the same. And for something so impossibly large, so capable of dominating anything around it, it does something we never expect from a giant. It harms almost nothing. This colossal animal, the largest fish in the sea, survives on some of the smallest food in it. Tiny drifting plankton. Clouds of microscopic life so small you'd need to strain the water to even find them. The whale shark simply opens a mouth wide enough to swallow a person, and instead, it filters the ocean gently through, taking in the smallest things alive and harming nothing bigger than a speck. It built the most powerful body in the water and chose to use it for the gentlest possible life. And it built that body to last. This is where the whale shark belongs in our story. Scientists have only recently begun to understand how long these animals actually live, and the answers keep climbing. A century, likely more. There are whale sharks out in the open ocean right now that have been alive for 100 years, and they may be nowhere near finished. They take decades just to reach adulthood. They are slow to grow, slow to mature, slow in everything they do. And that slowness is exactly the secret. Like so many of the long-lived creatures I've shown you, the whale shark is in no hurry. It plays a longer game than almost anything else alive. Imagine what 100 years means for an animal like this. A whale shark that is a century old has been crossing entire oceans again and again, for longer than most nations have existed in their current form. It has swum through waters on the far side of the planet and come back. It has felt the sea warm beneath the changing sky. It has drifted, silent and enormous, through 100 years of a world that had no idea it was even there. Because it asks for nothing, threatens no one, and moves through the deep water far from where most of us will ever look. There is a strange and beautiful lesson sitting inside this animal, and it's the perfect one to end on. We tend to believe that to last, you have to be fierce, that survival belongs to the hunters, the fast, the dangerous, the ones that take. And here, as the final word in this whole story, is the largest fish in the ocean, proving the opposite. It got enormous, and it got gentle. It grew more powerful than almost anything in the sea, and used that power to live slowly, eat the smallest things, hurt nothing, and simply endure. Its size isn't a weapon. It's a kind of patience made physical. A body built not to fight time, but to outlast it. And it ties together everything you've seen. The lobster that wouldn't age. The urchin that watched a century pass from a single rock. The flower that never wilts. The starfish you can't cut down, the cucumber that rebuilds its core, the slug that walks away from its own body, the turtle that quietly outlives us all. Every one of them found a different answer to the same impossible question. How do you keep going when everything alive is built to stop? And the whale shark answers it the way a giant would. Not with a trick, not with a strange escape, just by being so vast, so calm,
and so slow that the years seem to lose their grip on it entirely. But I'll be honest with you one final time, because by now you'd expect nothing less. The whale shark is not immortal, and even at its impossible size, it is not beyond reach. These gentle giants are struck by ships they're too slow to avoid. They're caught in nets and lines never meant for them. The very thing that protected them, their enormous, patient slowness, leaves them helpless against a fast and crowded modern ocean. The largest fish in the sea, an animal that may have been built to live for well over a century, can still be ended by us in a moment, before it ever reaches the age it was capable of. It has not escaped death. It simply pushed it further away than almost anything else ever has. So I'll leave you where this began, with the idea of time and the things that seem to slip its grasp. Everything in this video found its own quiet way to refuse the deal the rest of us were forced to accept. None of them are truly deathless. All of them can still be taken. But every single one of them, in its own strange and stubborn way, has loosened the hold that time has on all living things, and bought itself more of it than seemed possible. They don't know they've done it. That's the part I keep coming back to. The lobster, the turtle, the great drifting whale shark. None of them understands what it has. It doesn't feel lucky. It doesn't count its years. It simply lives, slowly, patiently, far past the point where the rest of us would have run out of time. And maybe that's the real secret. Maybe time can't touch the ones who never learned to fear it. They just keep going, quietly, endlessly, as if the clock that runs the rest of us had simply, for them, forgotten to start.